me, beat 'em up games have always been sort of a junk food genre. No competition, simple, and something you bust out with friends when you have nothing else to do. And right now, we're in a retro renaissance with the recent rise of indie development, bringing back the genres the rest have left behind. So come with me and let's check out 20 modern must-play beat 'em up games. Let's go! Double Dragon Gaiden, Rise of the Dragon, 2023. I gotta say, I was pretty skeptical when I first saw the trailer. This is the Double Dragon, and they chibified it? It wasn't until I started playing it that I realized it went deeper than that. This isn't a continuation of the Double Dragon series as I expected, but it's more of a spin-off or offshoot. Not just the art style, but practically everything is different from the classic Double Dragon. For example, the game has a tag team system where you can swap out characters. This isn't just a way to double your health bar. The tag partners can extend each other's combos and synergize with each other. So, you can use Jimmy to juggle enemies into the air, then switch to Miriam to blow them up with her rocket launcher while they're falling. Marvel Cosmic Invasion 2025. Marvel and beat 'em ups have always been a great pairing, and this latest game is no different. With a roster of 15 of the most out there heroes such as Beta Ray Bill and Phyla-Vell, who'll fight alongside fan favorites like Spider-Man and Wolverine. The game has you traveling from New York to the moon and all the way to alien planets and the negative zone. Something that separates this game from others is its aerial maneuverability. Some heroes like Nova and Iron Man can freely fly around the air, and even grounded heroes like She-Hulk can leap from one side of the screen to the other. This means that you gotta stay quick on your feet and jump out of being cornered by enemies. If you love Marvel or superheroes, this is highly recommended. Streets of Rage 4 2020. The developers, Dotemu, didn't just revive a dead franchise. They proved that hand-drawn animation could look better than pixel art. The art and animation are absolutely fantastic here. The game honestly feels like a living graphic novel. Truly, the art and animations are the real showstoppers here, Punches and kicks look heavy and solid, and characters move with a sort of realism that makes this game look so high quality. I mean, even the energy blasts and the magic have a sort of realism to them. There's also the special attacks which use up health to deal devastation, but much like Bloodborne, you can attack immediately after unleashing them to regain that health. Not only is this a risk and reward system, but it's one that requires tactical planning to utilize its full potential. River City Girls 2 2022. A beat 'em up that's also an open world RPG? It's quite ingenious, and I can't believe it hasn't really been done before. Not only does this game have an open world you can freely roam that's filled with enemies, but there's also an RPG looting and leveling up system as well. You can customize your moveset by learning new moves from Dojo. There are foods that buff your stats and even accessories you can equip that give you special abilities, such as dealing more damage to male enemies or reviving automatically. You're even able to recruit enemies who are able to come in and give you brief aid. River City Girls 2 takes the beat-em-up core gameplay and expands upon everything around it so that it's as expansive as modern-day AAA games, making this one of the rare beat-em-ups you have to dedicate many, many hours in order to beat this. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge 2022. Winner of the Best Action Game at the Game Awards 2022, this is one of the shining examples of this genre. Everything is completely polished to a professional level, and it's all accurate to the models of the 90s cartoons. Combat is fluid and precise, basically perfecting the gameplay of this genre. If you basically wanted to play as a turtle from the 90s cartoon, this is probably the definitive experience for that. You can play as the Turtles, April, Splinter, and Casey Jones. With the Turtles sewer home, the Technodrome, and Dimension X locales brought from the cartoon, it's basically a requirement for any true classic Turtles fan to experience. Fight and Rage 2017. This one tries its best to emulate the glory days of the 90s arcades, but with modern hindsight. Hardcore beat-em-up enthusiasts laud this as having the best combat engines in the genre. And it shows. Movement is weighty, but still responsive. And you need that responsiveness because this game has a parry system where if you tap towards an enemy, just as they go to hit you, you can parry them and extend your combo. With that and the ability to juggle enemies, you'll be trying over and over to extend your combo chain as long as you can. The aesthetic here is heavily inspired by the chunky sprite of the Final Fight game, as well as lifting the branching path system from Final Fight 3, which greatly adds to the replayability factor of this game.
Hurricane!
Final Vendetta 2022. This is for the hardcore crowd who thinks modern games are too soft. Final Vendetta is unapologetically old school in both its Neo Geo-inspired art style and its punishing difficulty that harkens back to the quarter-devouring standards of the 80s and 90s. Enemies are tough, and they'll take cheap shots at you. There's even wonky hitbox detection. You'll have to be just as tough back if you want to survive, mastering blocking and kicking downed opponents whenever you get the opportunity. Even the story, characters, and environments are basically lifted wholesale from those classics. This is a game made by and for the oldies who grew up on these games and think themselves superior because of that. If you want a real challenge and the satisfaction of mechanical mastery, then this truly hardcore game is for you. Dawn of the Monsters 2022. Kaiju games are rare, and good ones are even rarer. Dawn of the Monsters hits the sense of scale. You aren't just a person fighting thugs. You're a 100-foot monster smashing through skyscrapers. And I do mean that literally, as the environment is completely destructible. Buildings, trees, roads, and bridges all get annihilated in the wake of your passing. You play as characters inspired by Godzilla, Power Rangers, Voltron, Gamera, and Ultraman as you try to save Earth from an invasion of giant monsters. The art style is spectacular. The game uses special shaders to render the environment, characters, and VFX in a cel-shaded dot matrix comic style that makes every screenshot actually look like it's from a comic. There's also an augment system allowing you to make different playstyles and experiment with buildcraft. Phantom Break Battlegrounds 2013. This one is purely for those anime fans in this genre. Play as the anime stereotypical combat magical ninja high schooler, battle maid, or a martial arts shrine maiden. Fight waves of enemies across many anime-inspired locations. I will admit, I'm not a big fan of the chibi art style, but it works here because the characters have enough body movement and limb articulation to actually look nice fighting despite being a chibi. The levels are biplanar, meaning you can jump from the foreground to the background and back, making the levels feel a bit larger than the typical small corridors of other games, and giving more tactical options. Also, I gotta say, Christine, aka Kirisu from Steins Gate, is literally the last person I'd expect to play as in a beat-em-up. The Ninja Savior, Return of the Warrior 2019. Although this isn't the modern in the sense that this is a remaster of the 1994 title The Ninja Warriors, but everything has been completely cleaned up, polished, and overhauled so that this feels like more of a sequel than the same game. The artwork and sprite work, although remaining 16-bit, is now at a beautiful high definition, making the characters and especially the enemies more detailed and aligned. The detailing applies to the background, as the expanded widescreen gives you more space to work with and appreciate the background of. The characters here are extremely unique, with only one playable human ninja. The others are giant robots with extremely unique abilities and design. From the gargantuan Raiden that makes you feel more like a boss than the main character, to the Yaksha with extending limbs and tail that allows you to grapple and throw enemies from a distance. I recommend playing this purely because of these extremely unique characters and abilities. Mayhem Brawler 2021. I love the aesthetic, not the comic book superhero art style that's been done so many times. I meant the modern fantasy mixed with superhero. Hobo wizards, goblin gangsters, humanoid sewer rats, all in the modern setting. It's not really done too often, but when it is, it's usually really good. I also love how the cutscenes have a Twitter feed on the side, and how the level select is based on comic book cover. These designers loved their aesthetic and wanted to inject that into every part of the game, not just the core gameplay. Compared to the other games on this list, the core gameplay here is fairly standard, but everything around that, such as how you choose branching paths by choosing which issue of the story to read next, really makes this game so charming. Streets of Fury X 2015. Speaking of charming, I find this game to be incredibly charming as well. Looking like a game bunch of kids made in their basement, it's filled with that youthful amateur personality that makes you feel like humans are capable of achieving anything if they're passionate about it. At least that's what ran through my head when I saw it. And don't let the digitized amateur acting here fool you, because the combat is surprisingly good, putting high-budget studios to shame. The screen is usually filled with like 20 to 30 enemies. Long combos, air juggling chains, and massive special attacks gives this game shocking mechanical depth. The humor here is very mid-2010, based on stereotypical internet, YouTube, and meme stereotype. If you're able to join in on the joke here, you're in for a satisfying, sincere cult classic of a game. Bud Spencer and Terence Hill, Slaps and Beans, 2017. So, I've never watched the Italian action comedy duo Bud Spencer and Terence Hill, so most of these jokes and references flew straight over my head. Still, I had a blast playing this one. The combat here is slapstick, and slapstick pretty much describes the entire experience. This is one of those games I'd recommend you play with that non-gamer in your life, as the combat is easy and simple, and the humor will keep them laughing and having fun. The game is also filled with many mini-games that break up the core gameplay loop. From isometric buggy racing to hot dog eating contests, the variety here keeps things fresh. It's also surprisingly beautiful in a technical way. There are lots of environmental movements and simulation and, particle-like interactions. From leaves falling off shaken trees to cans of beans collapsing into piles as you bump into them, to rickety wooden structures collapsing into splinters. It's clear a lot of work went into making this game, and that it's not the same cash grab for the fans type licensed game. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, Complete Edition, 2021. Well, of course, this game had to be on this list. We were expecting it all, right? You can't talk about modern beat-em-ups without mentioning River City Girls and Scott Pilgrim. Now, I know the Complete Edition had a lot of controversy around it because of the Ubisoft acquisition, and how the game now has Uplay and Denuvo, meaning it's now a buggy, RAM-hogging mess that can only be played reliably on Windows. That said, though, I'm gonna be talking about the game outside that context. It is the world of Scott Pilgrim come to life, with the iconic art and character design of Paul Robertson, and the chiptune soundtrack by Anima Noguchi, which I personally believe is the best chiptune OST ever made. Playing as my favorite characters like Scott, Ramona, Knives, or Wallace, the game is an absolute joy to play for both fans and non-fans of the series. Mother Russia Bleeds, 2016. A beat-em-up with survival horror mechanics and aesthetics isn't something I thought I'd ever see, but Mother Russia Bleeds pulls it off magnificently. The body horror and grunge lighting effects really bring that disturbing factor to life, and the survival half of the equation is brought on by the drug extraction mechanic, where you have to extract that necro from convulsing corpses mid-fight in order to heal and activate Berserker mode. You're always hunting for your next fix while trying not to die, which actually ties perfectly into the narrative themes of addiction and the crocodile epidemic of the early 2010s. Yeah, go ahead and Google that one. This game is actually based on a true story. Kinda, not really. But for me, horror based on a real-life tragedy is the most effective at scaring me. The Takeover 2019. The Takeover has a unique art direction that makes me feel like I'm playing with action figures. 3D pre-rendered sprites a la Donkey Kong Country on a pre-rendered background with visual effects and particles that have the signature Unity particle system feel to it. This game is proudly a 90s callback with everything that entails. It's a fan project that studied the 90s beat-em-up genre and derived exactly what made them tick. From a gun sidearm you can use to dispatch enemies at range, to a rage mode with screen-clearing specials, to minigames between levels inspired by Outrun and Space Harrier, to even an amazing hardcore 90s soundtrack that gets you pumped. This game is the 90s arcade hangout distilled that'll have you reliving your youth. Paprium 2020. Now this game is extremely interesting because it's a game for the Sega Mega Drive that was released in 2020. Not only do you need a Mega Drive to actually play it, but the cartridge itself has an advanced modern processor that's able to push the Mega Drive beyond its limit. On top of all that, Paprium comes with a huge arcade cabinet quality custom controller called the Grand Stick 3. This game is really an entire package. As for the game itself, it's a good beat-em-up, and it has a unique mechanic, drug addiction. You can pop blue pills, which grant invincibility and strength, but be careful as it eats away at your health bar. Then, when you enter withdrawal, your character physically weakens, being slumping over, moving slower, and dealing less damage. It tests your critical planning skill, whether it's worth the power now to beat tough enemies and risk the repercussions later. Jitsu Squad 2021. Of all the games on this list, this is definitely the craziest. Epilepsy warning here because this game can genuinely be a sensory overload. The colors and effects here are bright and explosive, with so many enemies and visual effects popping off and filling the entire screen. Taking anthropomorphic inspiration from TMNT and Battletoads, alongside anime stereotypes, and a Toon Blast computer-drawn art style? Yeah, it's different. It's loud and bombastic, and it never lets up. It gets exhausting for a long play session, so, I recommend playing this for small bursts of time if you can. The gameplay is fun, with cool abilities and long combo chain. You can even call in support characters who can be cameos from other indie games and YouTube personality. And there's a transformation mechanic where you become overpowered and tear through hordes of enemies with some ease. Some people actually cannot handle this type of game, so proceed with caution. Knights of Brave 2023. Taking things down a lot of notches, Knights of Braveland is more of a roguelite RPG with a beat-em-up core. The art style and animation reminds me of Flash games, specifically Adventure Quest, but don't let the looks fool you. This game is a really fun RPG. Each run has you making decisions between stages that procedurally generate a story, and as you progress, you get different equipment that'll have you changing your fighting style from run to run. And as you complete runs and gain resources, you build up your guild hall, allowing you to become stronger and progress more over time. This game perfectly hits that one more run and I'll get them next time feeling that all roguelikes strive for, and I found myself playing this for hours without realizing it because of that.
For the Eagle of Rome, a treachery that could not go.
Wolverblade 2018. I'd never expect a beat-em-up to be described as historically accurate, but Wolverblade seems to have done just that. Set during the Roman invasion of Britain, it's not only historically accurate, it's also historically brutal. The game reminds me of Brave, of course, but also 300. You play as the defending Scots, protecting their homelands from invaders in recreations of actual historic battle. The combat here is slow, but brutal, with each swing of your axe chopping off limbs and heads. Soldiers scream in both rage and fear as blood paints the grass and trees, and corpses pile up on the ground. This game is deliciously brutal, and brings that hell yeah appreciation of Scottish history that most of us haven't felt ever since we've seen Braveheart. Marvelous Verdict. This list proves that the beat-em-up genre isn't just a line, it's thriving. We've gone from simple coin eaters to complex RPG-infused epics that challenge both our reflexes and our strategic thinking. And that's the beauty of this list. It's variety, not just of mechanics, but also art styles and characters. From the eye-melting chaos of Jitsu Squad to the horror of Mother Russia Bleeds, to the pursuit of perfection that a lot of these other games bring, I hope you've found something that has piqued your interest. And if you like their content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And I will see you on the next video.